Good evening, everybody. Erev Tov. If people can please find their seats, there's certainly plenty of empty seats. So we're going to start first with Mariv, which I'm going to lead, the evening service. And I've been asked to announce that if any of you are children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, to, after Mariv is over, to go back where Pearl, just raise your arm, okay? To go back to the room there, the ballroom, so that we could, you can march in and walk in together. So we begin with the evening service, which is a regular evening service, beginning on page 281. Please rise if you are able. Adonai Shemachineni Yom Karenu Baruchu Adonai Hambarach Baruch Hanarach Lelam Va'ed. Please be seated. Baruch Atah Elcha v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu lelam va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Amariv Arabim Avadon Kim chayenu v'yorechemenu v'hem neget yomam v'layla v'avatcha tasim imenu l'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Yahavta et Adonai v'hayim Shema Adonai Elohechem Emed B'emunah Kol Zov. U'malchuto beratzon kiblu alehem Moshe v'nei Yisrael l'chan hashira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam micha mocha be'elim Adonai micha mocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo seifele malchutcha ro v'necha b'kayam lifnei Moshe zeli anu v'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nei marki fadonai Yaakov v'galo miyad chazak menu baruch atah Adonai ka'al Yisrael hashkivinu. U'shmor tzeitenu v'oyenu l'chayim u'l'shalom me'atah be'er olam baruch atah Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'amen. Baruch Adonai bayom baruch Ki hamalchut shelcha hi u'meyat timloch b'chavod ki en lanu melech le'ata baruch atah Adonai hamelech b'chvodo tamid yimloch aleinu li'olam va'ed v'al kol masav Yudkadal v'yikadash merabah b'yamati rachutei v'amlich machutei b'chayechon v'yimechon v'chayei l'chol b'Yisrael b'aglav zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmirav v'barach le'olam u'me'amaya yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitpar v'yitmam v'nasei v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yital shmei l'kudasha b'rechu le'elam v'kol b'chata v'shirata tishb'chata v'nechamata da'amiram v'yalma v'imru amen. Please rise. The Amidah begins on page 286. And we read it in English or Hebrew to ourselves. Kaddish Shalem, page 294. Yitgalav Yigalash Merabah, Biamad, Rakute, Ramlich Machute, Bechayechon, Vimechon, Vchayedechol, Beisrael, Bagaz, Makariv, Amen. Yesh Merabah, Barach, Lamo Me'amaya, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitpar, Vishman, Vinaseh, Vitadar, Vitalev, Vital Shmir, Kudashad, Bruchu, Leila Mikol, Berchatav, Shirata, Tihush Bechatav, Nachmata, Damiram, Biamab, Amen. Titkabel Sloton, Valhon, the Kol Israel, Kodamor, Nishmar, Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemai V'chein Aleinu Val Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom V'ramav V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu Val Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. We would normally count the Omer now. It's a little early to do so. People are invited to do so when they go home. Aleinu, page 297. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol Latei Gedula Lioser Breshit Shelo Asanu Goye Haratzot Velo Samanu Kimishbechot Hadama Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kaem Vigor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam V'anachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim Livnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kakatu b'Toratecha Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed V'nemar V'haya Adonai Le'melech Kol Haaretz B'yom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo You may be seated. We turn to page 298 for Kaddish Aton for Mourner's Kaddish. We also recall now friends and family, former members of TBS, whose yahrzeit we observed this 27th of Nisan. Judith Harmon, Sophia Elsner, Robert Landsman, Aaron Fox, S. William Levy, and Berthold Lipper. May their memories be for a blessing. Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah v'yalmad zivrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayei u'b'yom echon u'b'chayei echol beit Yisrael b'agala u'b'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam umei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yishomam v'yitnasei Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei, Kudashat, Birchu. Le'ela, Min Kol, Birchata, B'shirata, Tush B'chata, B'nechemata, Damiran, B'alma, B'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, B'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, B'mromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Please be seated.
In a moment, we are going to commence with our Yom HaShoah commemoration. And we ask again if you would like to march with the children who are marching with candles to put on the ark. If you like to march with them, if you're a survivor, family of survivors, or anybody who feels like they want to take the march, they will be marching from the back. You can join them. So we invite you to do so. We'll wait just a moment while people are still coming in. I invite you to find your seats. We also take this opportunity to ask you to silence your phones or turn them off, whatever you feel comfortable with, but as long as we don't hear them during the service.
Bruchim Habaim, welcome, Erev Tov, good evening. We begin this evening of Yom HaShoah the Hagivurah, with just a few words about the name of the day itself. Traditionally, we translate the day as Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is a bit of a misnomer. When the Knesset in Israel in 1959 voted after 7 or 8 years of Israeli Jews commemorating this day, they entitled the name Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Day, the Hagvurah, and the day of strength, of courage, of remembering people who fought back. Tonight we have an incredibly unique Temple Beth Sholom of Roslyn commemoration. We will hear from Cantor Barnoy's mom, Sharon Solomon's dad, which just, I think, adds a tremendous level of meaning to each one of our own observance of the day, and to that of our families. Share their stories, even if they are not here with you now, but please share their incredible stories. So I was thinking a little about what expression you say to people, let's say after the service, right? There's an expression you might say on Purim, or on Yom Kippur, or on Shabbat. And there is no expression on Yom HaShoah v'Hagvurah. It reminds me a little bit about when a mourner is observing Shiv'ah and comes out of their home for the first time and comes into the synagogue on Friday night and sits out in the hall until after Kabbalat Shabbat is over. And the mourners then come in, and there's a traditional greeting that we, the congregants, make. And the response of the mourners is silence.
It is our duty to respect and honor those who have survived, for they bear witness for us all that those who are lost are not forgotten. We at Temple Beth Sholom are fortunate to have amongst us survivors of the Shoah. As is our tradition, we are privileged to invite these survivors to light candles in memory of those that were lost.
Erwin Forley, born in Czechoslovakia in 1927, lived in Munkac, Czechoslovakia, later Hungary, where we had 30,000 inhabitants, out of which less than half were Jews, of which about 10% survived. We were very comfortable until 1944, when the Germans came into Hungary, and we all ended up in Auschwitz, where my father, my brother, my 15 uncles and aunts, my grandfather, my two grandmothers, friends and cousins were murdered just because they were Jews. It's in their memory that I light this candle, and I was lucky enough to survive, and with my mother and sister we came to the States. Irvin Foley, born in
for Yom HaShoah. And this is, who are you, Mom?
And for
What is your name?
G. Meisner,
And where were you born?
were born in little town of Tulishkov near Kalish
And what year were you born in?
in 1920,
Okay, July.
July 1920.
Okay. And what year did you come to the United States?
In May April 1946.
6. And what camp were you in during the war?
I was in a few camps, but mainly I was in Berchtesgaden, and I was in
Robin.
Ravensbrück, and
That was it.
yeah, Ravensbrück mainly, yeah.
Thank you for remembering Jean Meisner for Yom HaShoah.
Thank you. What is your name?
Sally Birabal
Where are you from in Europe?
from the truth is from Tarnakot.
And what camps were you in during the war? What camps were you in?
Yeah, I was in Auschwitz
And when did you come to America?
in March, May
What year? What year did you come to America?
45.
45?
Yes,
Right after the war?
yes,
Okay. Now we're going to light this candle, okay?
okay,
We're going to light this candle for your grandfather and your parents and your brothers and your sister and your aunts and uncles and cousins, all of them that were killed during the war, okay?
okay.
I'm going to light it for you, all right?
You don't have to.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me your hand. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you. Good afternoon. What is your name?
Zutka Borenstein, Borenstein from the family Gutmann with one N.
And where were you from in Europe?
Oh, I am from New York. I am born in Poland, and the town is Radom. And it's not only a town, it was full of Hasidim and with the birds, and it was lovely, beautiful, and from there I come. I was born in Radom.
And where were you during the war? What camps were you in? What camps were you in during the war?
During the war, I was mostly in Auschwitz, abused, hidden. In the middle of the night, they woke us up. For what? Just to abuse us.
Sitka Bornstein lighting a candle in memory of all the people she lost during the Holocaust.
Sarah Baruch's family is from Vilnius, Lithuania. Sarah and her family arrived in Israel in 1948 aboard the Exodus. Dr. Nathan Baruch's family is from Cluj and Sighisoara, Hungary and Romania. Nathan and his family arrived in Israel in 1949 from the holding camps in Cyprus. Esther Barnoy was born in the small town of Auschwitz, currently called Auschwitz. She arrived in Israel in 1948 on the Exodus. Esther is currently in Israel. Her son, Cantor Barnoy, will light her candle. Oh, they did it.
Please rise. As we do at every moment that we memorialize our beloved who have passed, we recite the memorial prayer. This memorial prayer, however, is like no other usual memorial prayer, for this one mentions in the Hebrew in detail the horrors of the Holocaust. Men, women, and children of the house of Israel who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. Malei rachamim shochein bameromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanefei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות כל אחינו ואחיותינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשואה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש Kiddush Hashem Began Eden, Began Eden Tehei Menuchatam Ana Bal Harachamim Astireyem Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Utzeror Bitzeror Rachaim Et Nishmotem Adonai Unachlatam Veyanuchu Veshalom Al Mishkevoteihem Venomar Amen. Please remain standing for the Kaddish.
It's found on the inside page of your program. Please join me in reciting Kaddish together for the 6 million that were murdered in the Shoah. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman karim ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the God who creates peace in the heavenly spheres give the gift of peace to us, to the entire people Israel, and to all who dwell on earth. And let us say, amen. You may be seated.
Life was filled with culture, color, and music. Lives for many Jews were just calm and free. Europe expanded with Jews livening the land they lived in. Family was usually close together and nearby. Traditions were kept and some were lost, but Jews were thriving in this world. Slowly the walls increased as rights were taken away. After many rights, freedom disappeared. A butterfly once full of cover and lively was pushed into limits. These limits became a box that many butterflies struggled to not wither.
Our Hanukkah was lit up bright until the Nazis came. We were moved to a dirty, ruddy ghetto. One candle went out. Food shortages were everywhere, making food invaluable. Another flame dampened. One night, the Nazis tore my family apart. I would never see them again. A flame blown out. I was put into a cattle cart, filth everywhere. Another candle went out. I went to a camp separated into lines. My family is on one line while I am on the another. A number seared into my arm. A flame went out. I knew my family was dead and that without them, I was not going to live. Any hope inside me died. Another candle went out. Every day, people in the camp either worked to death or died. All happiness died. Another candle went out. As the bodies started to pile, lifeless eyes stared. I knew it was not right. My heart stopped as I saw another body. The last candle went out. It was a dark time until the soldiers liberated us. I wish to see my family. I hope to see my friends. I want to go back home. I want my life back, but nothing will be the same. No, not after that. The things I saw, the things I felt, the families forever lost in the Holocaust, the things that I will never forget. But I have faith in God that we will survive, and one day we will be together again, me and my loved ones. I don't know if I still have a family, but if I don't, what will happen then? All I want is to be home with happy days and good times. But I don't know what will happen. I'm scared to go home. If home is even there.
Looking at them, they look like hollow bones. No flesh, no feelings in their eyes. But there's a spark of hope. They have been chosen to rebuild from the ashes that have been thrown and burnt as a result of others' evils. Yet their troubles weren't over. It wasn't a smooth boat ride to the land of milk and honey, or smooth landings. Like doves rejected, their British didn't let them land. Yet finally they could. They could rebuild their destroyed world. Who were they? They were the people on the Exodus.
When the ship docked on the coast of Palestine, the soldiers that were in Palestine did not allow any of the Jews to enter. The many Jews that were not allowed to be admitted because the British refused to lift the ban on the immigration. Even though the Jews were freed, they still were not respected by everybody.
It took time to settle into our land of milk and honey, to be respected, to belong. It took time to reign hope and faith and have independence. Rebuilding. We have hope because of the challenges that we have been through. We will always be strong and won't give up on what we believe. We have faith and hope. We are builders, we are faithful, we survive.
In planning for this Yom HaShoah commemoration ceremony, Sharon and I had an initial conversation prior to the meeting with the Yom HaShoah committee. As we were discussing this year's commemoration, we thought it would be interesting to include the stories of survivors who went to Israel. We both agreed it was a great idea because it's Israel's 75th anniversary. Sharon said to me, you know, by the way, my Ima arrived in Israel on the boat, the Exodus, in 1947 as an 8-month-old baby. And I almost fell to the floor. I said, my Ima came to Israel on the Exodus. She was 8 years old. We were both stunned, as we had parallel histories of families that left Europe and ended up together on their journey to Israel on the same ship. My Ima's story began in Poland in a small shtetl, and Sharon's Ima in Vilna, Lithuania.
So Cantor and I decided that we are both going to reach out to our moms and get details of our family's history. And I think by learning these details, it was profound, it was painful to hear the fate of the families in such detail. For me personally, my grandparents didn't want to talk about their past and their family's fate. It was too painful for them. But in August 2019, my sister Michal and I went to Poland and visited the different cities our grandparents came from, and also visited Auschwitz too. It's where my step-grandmother Bluma spent a year of her life. I was very reluctant to go on this trip, but this trip provided me with much-needed answers for all of us to get inside into a small window into the hearts of my grandparents' journey. Growing up, we knew of their unspoken pain, their longing for their loved ones. And I'm grateful for my sister for encouraging me to go. It is my honor to present Cantor Barnoy's mom, Esther Minzer Barnoy, who will be on the first video, and my beloved Ima, Sarah Birnbaum Baruch, who will share their family story with you this evening.
All right, here we are with my mother, Esther Barnoy, who's going to tell us about her story of when she was on the ship, the Exodus, on her way from Europe and eventually, after a long journey, to Israel. Wendy, you're going to ask some questions.
I am. First of all, I want to thank you, Mrs. Barnoy, for participating in our Yom HaShoah commemoration. And I'd like to ask you, where and when were you born?
I was born in Poland in 1939. That means that I was 8 months when the war broke out.
Where in Poland were you born?
I was born in a city that later was very known, not very for very good things. In Polish, it's called Oświęcim, and later the Germans turned it to Auschwitz. And my family was in Brzezinka, which is a part of Oświęcim, and Brzezinka became Birkenau, what is now known as Birkenau.
When did your family leave and where did they go?
When the German came in, Friday, September 1st, 1939, the men of the family left first. They just fled first. My family, the women stayed in Oświęcim. They stayed home. They didn't, for 3 months, they didn't know what happened to their husbands and fathers. And after 3 months, they got a message that the men are in a certain city near the border of Russia. And then the women left after 4 months. The women left and joined the men, and they started their way to the border of Russia to avoid the Germans.
And where did they go? Where did they spend the rest of the war?
The Russian at that time, when people that fled the war came to the border, they let everybody in and sent everybody to Siberia. And that's where my parents were the first 3 years. My sister was born there. My mother was pregnant while they were fleeing, and going to the border. So my sister was born in Russia, in Siberia. After 3 years, I don't know the reason. I just didn't ask. The Russian parliament, or whatever they are called, let the people from Sibir to go to Tashkent, which is in Ukraine. And so the rest of the war we spent in Tashkent.
And when did your family leave that area and start the journey to Israel?
Okay, in 1945, when they heard that the war is almost over, that the Russians are winning. This is what they knew, that the Russians are winning the war. They fled Russia because at that time, Stalin's time, you came into Russia, but you never could leave. So they fled by night, quietly, left the country, and it was a very long and dangerous journey to go back to Poland, and from there to look for a way to get to Israel, to Palestine, really.
And where did you embark? Where did you once you were in Poland? From Poland, where?
While we were in Poland, Poland, and not only Poland, all Europe was a place that many people were wandering around. They didn't have a place where to stay. I mean the Jewish people that left the camps, and they were looking for people for their families. Maybe somebody survived, and so we went from Poland to Italy. Italy was a place that all the refugees that wanted to go anywhere, doesn't matter if it's Israel or USA or whatever, Australia, wherever the people went. In Italy, there were camps of the refugees. So when my parents wanted only Israel, so they were looking for a way to get there. My father made contact with the Haganah, and he heard about the Exodus, which is they started to assemble the people to go on a ship. At that time, the English were ruling the country, the Palestine, and didn't let Jewish people go there. So it was we had to go quietly and hope that we will be led into the country. But the Haganah, the Exodus was a very special ship. The Haganah assembled young families with young children and women and pregnant women, and young children from the organizations like Bnei Akiva, like the youth organizations, and they hoped. I mean, they wanted and they hoped the English will let these people in, people with young children and pregnant women. So from Italy, they took us to Nice, to France, and there, we went on the ship and left for Israel.
Do you know how many people are on the ship?
On the ship, this was a big a fishing ship, really, and it was made for like 300, 400 people. On the ship we were 4,554 people, unbelievably jammed in. The whole ship was banks, one above the other, one above the other. That way we slept on the ship. It was very, very crowded.
I have an
So,
interesting question. I don't know if you know the answer to this because it just came to my mind, but the name Exodus obviously has special implications for us because of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt and all that. Was this ship named the Exodus before, or was it named Exodus for this voyage?
the Haganah gave the name, so it was for the voyage. I don't remember what the name of the ship was before, but it came from United States. The Haganah bought this ship. It was not a new ship. It was an old ship, and the Haganah bought it in the United States. Brought it to France. There they made all the accommodations. So all these people, so many people can go on it, and from there we left.
How old were you when you went on board?
I was 8 years old. My sister was 6 years old, and my mother was pregnant.
And what do you remember about being on the ship?
I remember a lot. By 8 years, I really remember a lot. I remember the tzfifut
Tightness,
so many people. It was very, very crowded. Especially, I remember. Especially I remember the war that came on the shores of Palestine when the English caught the ship and didn't let us into Haifa. We saw the Mount Carmel, and we saw the lights from Haifa, and we couldn't get in there. And it was a very, very tough war between three warships, British warships, and a small ship that wanted to get to Israel and couldn't.
Spoken, you told a very poignant story about two brothers on the ship and what happened to them. Would you mind telling the congregation that story?
When the English caught the ship, and they took the people. We were 4,500 people on the ship, so they divided us in three, and every British warship, took 1,500 people on board, and we went on our way. We went down the Exodus. On the way, when we left the Exodus, on the way, I will never forget that we saw a young man over he was like sitting on another man, and he was crying very, very, very hard. And later, they told us that these were two brothers that survived the camps together. And on the ship, one brother was killed from the war, and that was very, very, very moving, very sad. That he survived the camps and was killed on his way to Israel. So I cannot forget this. It comes to me very, very often that what I saw there.
When you were turned away on the ship, where did the British take you?
Okay, the British took us back to Nice. They wanted to bring us back to Nice, where we Nice. France didn't want us, so they did not let us go down. We were not ready to leave the ship, so we didn't want to leave, and they didn't want us. That took 3 months. We went from one city in the Mediterranean, one city to another. It took 3 months for that round, and no country wanted us to leave to get in. Some people, just a few people that were really sick, got sick on the ship, and 2 women that gave birth and needed help, they went down and left the English ship. The English saw that there is no solution, so they took us back to Germany. They took us back to. And Germany at that time was divided between, I think, 4 countries, and they took us to the British zone, and every ship had 1,500 people from the Exodus, and so we had 3 camps, different camps, every camp with 1,500 people. What was there, they at least that they let the Haganah rule inside. The Haganah, whatever the Haganah said, what was okay. They did not go into the camp, but outside, we were surrounded by Kedel barbed wires, yeah, and we were there till the state of Israel was established in 1948. The state of Israel slowly brought in all the refugees that couldn't get into the country, and were in Cyprus, and we were in Germany, and they were in the state of Israel brought the people in after the war. Our time came, it was around Hanukkah, 1948. It was like around December.
And by this time, how old were you?
By this time, I was already 9 years old. Okay, it took a year and a half, 9, or maybe nine and a half. I just want to tell that till we came to this camp, I was never in a school. I did not go. We didn't have where to go to a school. We left Russia, and on the way there was no school. So the first alphabet that I learned was in this camp. We had Kita Aleph. Everybody from 5, 6 years till 10, till 11, whoever did not know Hebrew went to one class. We called it Kita Aleph, but there were different ages there, and so this is what was the first time that I learned to read and speak.
I'm sure you remember arriving in Israel. Do you remember the feeling of finally being in Israel?
Yeah, well, I think that children that have parents that take care of them, the truth is we were very excited to be in Israel, but I don't remember feeling anxiety or feeling bad or something that I missed. I had food. I had a cover over my head and a bed where to sleep at night, and I was happy.
Is there anything that you would like to say to the young people in the audience or to the congregation? Any message about your experience?
Okay. But what I always, there are some people, Holocaust survivors, that don't want to go back to Poland because they say that Poland is a cursed land. They never want to go back. I think that every Jewish young person or older should go to Poland. Poland is like a big cemetery of the Jewish people, and there is a mitzvah in the Torah which is called Kever Avot, that you have to go and visit the graves of your parents. And all Poland is a big Kever Avot, and every Jewish people should go there and see what happened. Never, never, never forget. Never.
I'm going to tell you the story the way I heard from my parents. My father is Mayor Birnbaum, rest in peace. My mother, Musia Birnbaum, rest in peace. My adopted grandma, Sarah Kornblum, and my brother Chaim, he's 80 years old, he lives in Israel, Haifa, and myself, Sarah Baruch, married to Nathan. I have 3 children, I have 7 grandchildren, and this is my family now. And the story starts that my parents was born in Lithuania. It's called, those times, it's called Lita. My father was born in Vilnius. It was the capital of Lithuania. My mother came from a little town close to Vilna. It's by name Ivia. When she was 14 years old, she left her home. She came from a very religious family, 7 kids. But she's the only one who left home, and she wants to study in the Jewish gymnasium. Gymnasium in Vilna. My father was studying in a school close to the gymnasium, what's named Ort. So half day he was studying to manufacture furniture. In the afternoon, they study regular study, and in the evening, Jewish study. They spoke very fluently Hebrew, both of them. And they met and they became a couple. In 1939, when the German invaded Poland, my father came to my mother and said, I'm leaving. We have to run because the German is very close to Lita. But my mother said, how can we run? I have such a big family. We have to go first to my family and ask them to come with us. My father and my mother went to her family and begged them to come with them. My grandma, Sarah, but this is my name, and my grandpa Moshe said, nothing will happen. We are not going anywhere. Her sister, they told me one was married, one had a baby, she was engaged, and she begged them, come with us. She had another 2 brothers. They said to my mother, somebody has to take care of the family. So they didn't have a choice. They said goodbye, and this is the last time that she saw her family. And they went to Vilna, my father's family, a small family. My grandpa, David, he was wounded in the First World War, and he lost his leg. My grandma, Bella, tell to my father, how can we live? We cannot move with him. And my father has one young brother, and he said to him, Shimon, come with us. He said, how can I come? I have to take care of the parents. They said goodbye. It was the last goodbye, and they left. They went to the nearest town. It's called Lida. And there was a town that a lot of trains were there. And they were successful. They found one train who went to the east. They went on the train, and it took the journey 5 or 6 days. And they stopped in a place, it's called Almaty. Almaty is the main city of Kazakhstan, the capital of Kazakhstan. Those place was very poor place. There is farmers, and it was a lot of the Jewish people who succeeded to run from the German. Their life there was very difficult. They have to steal potatoes from the field, but they never complained. He said, "Thank God we are alive." And that's the way. And my father started to build tables because he studied it, and he started to sell the farmers some tables and chairs. So sometimes they give him food for the chair or for the table, and sometimes he succeeded to sell. So that is the way they survived there. But I never heard from them one complaint. He said it was hard, it was terrible. No, they are so happy that they are surviving. After a while, my father got a job in the coal mine. And my mother was pregnant with my brother, and she had a baby in 42. And then they was looking for a mural and a rabbi. They found a rabbi and a mural, and they were so happy that my brother had a bris, and they have a chuppah. They was married. And my mother comes from a very religious family. She was so happy. She said to me, "Sarah, you don't believe how happy I was that I have a chuppah." And that's the way thank God, they survived. And my father started to work in the coal mine. And then it's a very story, this is a story that I want to tell you, is every day when he sit to eat his piece of bread, and it was a break, and a woman was sitting near him, and he saw a nice lady. It looks like a very nice lady, and she told him, "I come from Lodz. I had a husband and I have 4 children." The same day when the German come into Lodz and they want to do the selection, I went to a dentist because I have problem with my teeth, and I went to not a Jewish doctor. He take care of my teeth, and I start to walk back home. Her neighbor, the gentle neighbor, said to her, "Sonia, Sarah, run." They took all your family, your children, your husband, everyone. Run, save your life. She probably ran and saved her life. She went on the same train who went to the east, and she was alone. My father was telling her, you know, my wife is such a young woman, and she just had a baby. I would love you to, if you come and see her and talk to her. Maybe she needs some help. And she said, of course, of course. So every day after they work in the coal mine, she went to my mother, she helped her. And one day my mother said to her, let her ask her to stay with us. We have nobody. And she became their mother. And she became the grandmother of my brother at the same time. And that's the way and we became a family. And we adopted. When the war was finished, my father said, we are going back home. They took my brother, my grandma, the adopted grandma, and my mother. They took some pieces, but I don't know what they had, and they took the train back to Lita. The first stop, they went to my parents' home, my mother's home. Nobody left. But she heard a very interesting story. When the German and the Ukrainian took them to Babi Yar, to the big hall, her young sister, Sima, she was a gorgeous, tall, beautiful girl. One of the soldiers took her out from the line, and he said to him, I will save your life. And okay, she went with him. He took her to his place, I don't know exactly. And after 2 days, she ran away. She ran, and she went to the forest to find the partisan. But the partisan heard that a German soldier took her out from the line. And they thought that he sent her to spy on them. And they shot her, and they killed her. At the same time, when my mother heard this story, she said my heart to my father, we are living here, we are not staying in this place anymore. They went to my parents' family, and they heard the same similar story, but they was killed in Ponar. Nobody left. But they was looking around, and they heard there is DP camp in Poland. So they talked to the family. My mother was, I think she was pregnant. And they took the train, and they arrived to Poland in a place, in the DP camp in Gliwice. They stayed in the DP camp. It was not so bad because the joint and the Haganah, they brought them food and some clothes. So it was not so bad, and they were happy because they saw a hope. We are going into Israel, to Medinat Israel. My mother was a great Zionist, and my father was okay, but my mother was a really Zionist. And they stayed in the camp. My father became one of the organizers of the DP camp, and they said, we are waiting. We are waiting for a boat who come from United States, from Milwaukee. One rich Jewish man bought the boat to help the survivor from the Holocaust. So he bought the boat, and we are waiting her to arrive to France. In the meantime, I was born there. And we are a big family. And my father was busy with the committee, and one night he came, tonight, in the middle of the night, we are leaving the camp. He said to my mother, take whatever we can, and we are going. We went, and there was waiting outside on the camp, trucks. So we went on the trucks, the baby, my father 3 years old, my grandma, and my parents. And we went on the truck for the next trip, the next journey. We arrived to Sète in France, and there was waiting the big boat. And we got passport. This is my passport. My mother and me. This is we have been the first 100. I'm going to give it to you. We have been the first 100 passenger that we went out. We went on the boat. On the boat, we went down. We went down the boat. In the bottom of the boat, we get every family who had a small space to stay there. And we arrived 4,550 refugees, old, Katzatnikas, we call them, surviving from the Holocaust, young children without parents, from Shomer HaTzair, Bnei Akiva, from Morocco, from all over Europe who survived. They went on the boat. And who was on the boat? Our captain was named Aika Haronovich, a guy for 25 years old, a commander from the Haganah, Yossi Harel, the commander from the refugee, Rosman. And we have some other people, and the most important people, we have 8 sailors, young guys who volunteer from New Jersey, from New York, in Brooklyn. I met them many years ago, and I thank them for their help. We have a priest there. All the people were so happy. We are going home. We are going home. The condition was very bad, and it's really unbelievable. I said to my mother, how could you stay there with a little baby? Because it was not enough water on the boat. She washed me with from the Mediterranean water, and I became very sick on the boat. I said, how could you stay there? He said, where do you want me to go? We are going home. She was such a tough lady. She was so proud that she is going home. We left Sète in the middle of the night, that the British wouldn't find us. We left, I don't know how our captain did it, alone, without help from the French. So they left the port, and he started to sail to Gaza. From Gaza, he was planning to sail to Haifa. But 200 meters from there, we heard a British boat and screaming, stop sailing, stop sailing. And they was all shocked, but they was prepared. They took potatoes, food cans, and the British start to hit our boat. Strong, and really hit the boat. And a bunch of English soldiers jumped into to the boat, and it started a war on the boat. Our people didn't give up. They fight with the potatoes, they fight with the food cans and the pieces of wood. But fortunately, the British killed 3 of our people, and we have 100 wounded people. So the Haganah decided, stop fighting. We don't want that more people will die. So the British mandate take over the boat, and we were selling to Haifa. And they divided us, the 4,500 refugees, to 3 groups. We are on one of the boats, it's called Ocean Vegan. And one important thing that I want to mention is, the same time that they treat us like animals, the British, it was a delegation from the United Nations, and they saw how they treat the poor people who survived this terrible war. And they went back to the United Nations. They said, enough, they need a Jewish land. I think it was helping to see how they treat us. From there, they took us to a port de Bourg in France. They spoke to the French government, take the refugee to your country. They agree. The French people agreed to take us. But our people said, we are not going to anywhere. But some people left because they were very sick. They couldn't stay anymore on the boat. So after they put us in 3 boats, one was we went on the ocean vegan, and I really don't remember all the boat. I said, I don't remember really all the other boats. I remember my boat. And we arrived to a place in France, Port de Bourg. It was a big port, and I explained it before that they spoke to the French government if they want to accept the refugees, and they said yes, we would take them, but just if they will come voluntarily. But our people of the boat, they have a mission. We are not going anywhere. We want to go to Palestine, Eretz Israel. And they fight for 3 weeks. The Germans didn't want to bring food on the boat, not water, but they survived. We are lucky that the Jewish people from the French became a big delegation, and they brought us water and food for the babies, for the women, for the young children, and we survived that way for 3 weeks. And then the British saw that they have no choice, and that we will punish the people who's on this boat, or the 3 boats. And they sent us back to Germany. In Germany, it was a German territory in Hamburg. And we stopped in a camp, it's called Peppendorf. And it was all surrounded with wires. And who was around, surrounded the camp was German soldier who worked for the British. You know, the people who came for Auschwitz, they became shocked. I said, where we are again in the camp, in Auschwitz. It was a really terrible stuff, that what they did. It was really immoral. But we are lucky. We have enough food. They joined us, give us food. They opened schools. They opened theaters in Yiddish. And they have such a not bad life in the end. And one day, my brother Chaim, he went to play football outside the camp, and suddenly a big truck ran over his legs. My mother took him to the hospital in Hamburg, and the German doctor said, I'm going to cut his legs. My mother said of my dead body, you don't touch my son. And she was screaming in the hospital, I want a Jewish doctor. She was doing a mess. They said, okay, we'll bring a Jewish doctor. After a while, a Jewish doctor came in, and she said, calm down, let me check out. And he checked my brother, and he said, he will be okay. I don't cut his leg. He will heal, and he will be fine. So I don't know how long he was in the hospital. I don't know how long after it he healed himself, but he is okay. He was okay. And at 48, when Israel was declared like a Jewish state, the Haganah sent a boat. And I think we were the last people who left the camp. And we took the boat and we arrived to Haifa. And when we arrived to Haifa, This is my last word. I will never forget my rest of my life. My mother said, we are walking with a tall head, and still there was a British soldier. And we said, we win, you lost. And she said, I was so proud to walk of the land of Israel. And there was those time, the Arab left Haifa, they ran away. So she found a home. She found a big house, an old big house. I think it was a German house. And all my family went to there. And then we start another journey to survive Israel. I want to say thank you to the whole group in Beth Sholom who arranged me to speak for them. I want to thank special to Wendy that she came over to travel to see me. I want to thank my daughter Sharon. She said, she encouraged me, Ima, you have to tell the story. If not you, who will tell? I want to tell my children who is in the synagogue and my grandchildren. And thank you, all of you. Toda.
So, you heard the story of two amazing women who shared a harrowing history of how they fled Europe and finally, after lots of tribulations, did come to Israel. You heard that I asked my mother when to name the boat, and that it was actually named the Exodus on purpose. And you know, our exodus from Egypt, if you remember the story in the Bible, wasn't easy either. 40 years in the desert to finally come to the Promised Land, and my mother and Sharon's mother and more than 5,000 other people on the Exodus had their own exodus to come through, to finally go to our Promised Land. So we really thank them for telling their story. And now we have a very special presentation.
Kita Zion students present before you tonight a mural of the remarkable exodus that became a symbol of hope and resilience for the survivors for a better tomorrow. This boat, known as the Exodus 1947, is a sign of the Jewish spark that yearned to go home and the hope for a better tomorrow that would begin for them in Israel. It was not meant to carry 4,500 people. It was intended to carry 400 passengers on luxury cruises throughout the Chesapeake Bay.
Through its name, Exodus 1947, she earned her place in history with all the other great exoduses of the Jews. We are grateful for Nira Benyamini, our art teacher, for helping us realize this extraordinary piece of art. We, the students of Kita Zion, dedicate this mural to our speakers, Mrs. Esther Barnoy, Cantor Barnoy's mother, and Mrs. Sarah Baruch and Mr. Nathan Baruch, Sharon Solomon's parents, for sharing their family story.
Dr. Nathan Baruch is a second-generation Holocaust survivor. Born in a refugee camp in Cyprus, where his parents were deported by the British. He's the quintessential example of what it means to rise from the ashes and to be part of the exodus of our survival. Dr. Baruch served 18 years in the IDF and completed his service as a lieutenant colonel in the Armored Corps. He was a member of a special team designed to develop various high-tech advanced systems for the defense industry. He took part in establishing the Israeli Technological Incubator System, where he led 4 startup companies. He taught business administration at Tel Aviv University and was a practicing business consultant. Dr. Baruch headed a venture group of leading American communications firms and served as the managing director of the FIDF, Friends of the IDF. Dr. Baruch graduated from Bar-Ilan University in industrial psychology and holds a PhD in business administration from Washington University. He's retired and lives with his wife, Sarah, in Connecticut, and is a published author of 3 books. This evening, in honor of Yom HaShoah, he will tell the story of his parents surviving Auschwitz and Transnistria labor camp. Dr. Baruch.
Good evening. I would like to start with thanking the Committee of Yom HaShoah for choosing to share the story of my family, a story that I will title as From Extinction to Revival. My mother, Bluma, comes from a well-sustained, well-established, upper middle-class family in Hungary. 4 girls, 1 boy, living very nicely till the Germans arrived. The Germans arrived in Hungary and took over Hungary on March of 1944. Within less than 3 months, by end of June, Hungarian Jewry ceased to exist, perished. Most of them in Auschwitz, but not only in Auschwitz. My mother's family, Bluma and the family, arrived at Auschwitz on June 11th, after days in a train, in a cattle car, with no food, no water, nothing. And upon arrival to Auschwitz, they were rushed off the train onto the platform. Big tumult, a lot of people, thousands of people on the platform. And once they are down on the platform, my grandfather realized he forgot something. So he rushes back to the car, and a guard stops him, asking him, "Bloody Jew, where do you go?" So he said, "I forgot my tallis and tefillin on the car, on the train." So he replied, "You will not need them anymore." That was the aha moment of my grandfather understanding where they are, understanding the gravity of the situation, understanding that they are not here to resettle as they were told, but something else. He came back, and my mother told me that once he was back, he was totally changed. He stopped talking. He became white in 5 minutes. His beard, his hair became white in 5 minutes, and he was a different person. But they didn't have much time to mingle or to talk to each other, because soon enough, after that, the sinister, notorious selection process started by Dr. Joseph Mengele coming and with a small wand in his hand, waving his hand, the wand left and right, playing God. Joseph Mengele, AKA Angel of Death, was the one who made the selection who will live and who will die. He approaches the crowd and waves with the wand right and left, creating two lines, a right line, and a left line. On the right line, my mother, Bluma, and her older sister, Tzipora, were on the right line. The rest of the family, my grandfather, my grandmother, my grandmother's mother, and two of my mother's sisters, my aunts, one of them holding a one-year baby in her arm, were on the left line. All those on the left line didn't make it through the next 2 hours. They were taken to the gas chambers, stripped, suffocated, and then cremated, finished, perished. My mother and Tzipora were taken with the rest of the people on the right lane to their barracks, where they spend the time from now on. But even then, my mother didn't realize where they are. They were so naive. So when my mother came to the barrack, she asked one of the inhabitants, one of the skeletons, where are my family? Where are the family members that were on the left line? So she takes her out and points towards the crematorium, where the chimney and a heavy black smoke came out. And she says, "There goes your family." My mother entered a state of shock. She wanted to run towards the electrified wires on the perimeter of the camp, and that happens many times during her stay there. But luckily, her sister, Tzipora, saved her. Generally, had it not been for Tzipora, my mother wouldn't have come back from Auschwitz. There were several anecdotes that I will share with you, but there's a lot more that we became privy to during the years from various sources. One of those days, Tzipora comes to my mother and gives her a piece of bread and says, "Look, I managed to steal for you another piece of bread." And mind you, a piece of bread in Auschwitz was worth its weight in gold. It meant the difference between life and death. So my mother was very happy and ate the piece of bread, just to find out later on that that day was Yom Kippur. And Tzipora fasted and gave her her portion, but she didn't want my mother to know that there was Yom Kippur. Another anecdote, one day my mother wanted to take a shower, in the barrack. Not on the time that was, not on the hours that were assigned for taking showers. So she sneaks into the bathroom and wanted to take the shower. She was caught by the superintendent, or they were called the Blokova. That was the name they used there. And she beat her almost to death. She beat her with everything she could lay her hands on. With a 2x4, with a rod, she stepped on her with the boots, she kicked her. My mother was bloody all over. But somehow she survived. This only because she wanted to take a shower. Another anecdote I'll share with you. My mother became sick. I'm not sure if there was consequence of the beating or some other issue. She was not a strong person to start with. She was kind of a sick person. So she was sick, high fever. So they took her to the infirmary or the clinic, whatever there was, a place where the sick people were, and she was there. Tzipora heard that the next day a selection was going to take place. And obviously that goes without saying that the sick people are going straight to the gas. So she risked her life sneaking through 3 or 4 barracks in order to get to my mother and to tell her that no matter what, the next morning you are going out and standing for the selection, because otherwise you're going to die. But my mother said, I have high fever, I cannot even stand, much less march or do anything. So she said, I don't care. People will help you. You will be supported from right and left. Just come out, because otherwise you are not going to leave. Sure enough, my mother did the effort, and she was supported and helped by her friends from right and left, and survived that selection too. Towards the end of their stay there, January 45, when the Soviets were approaching, the Germans started to flee. I mean, they were afraid of the Soviets, so they took the thousands of the inhabitants there, the skeletons there, on what was called March of Death. They were marching days, no food, no water, nothing. Marching just to get away from the approaching Soviets. They were marching during the day. During the night, they were sleeping somehow. My mother said, we didn't have anything to eat, anything to drink. Obviously, they were actually grazing for eating, and they were drinking water from murky puddles and ponds, while moving aside the frogs, the algae, the seaweed on the puddles. And bitterly, my mother said later on, maybe that was what kept us alive, because of the penicillin in the algae. One day, she said, one day in the march, one morning they get up and the Germans are gone. They felt that the Soviets are very close, so they fled. They left the refugees or wherever there. So they are on their own now. They have to take care of themselves. So the first thing is looking for food. So they went into, they looked for food. They entered the first village. They entered the first house, first home they arrived at, and everything was empty. Even the residents fled because they knew the Soviets are approaching. So everything was empty. For them, it was good. So they looked for food. My mother and Zipporah entering the pantry, and on one of the shelves, my mother sees something she liked very much. She sees a yellow apricot jam. My mother loved apricot jam. So she takes off the shelf the jar, and with a handful with a paw, the handful in the jar, she put it in her mouth, and disappointing. It was not jam, it was mustard. So disappointing was that there was no mustard in our home. I didn't see mustard. I didn't know what mustard is till I left home. Somehow they survived, and they managed to get back to their hometown, just to find out that their home is taken, their belongings looted, nothing. All they have is what they are wearing. They looked here and there in order to try and make a living or to rehabilitate themselves. And they managed to get to a kind of it was not a camp, a DP camp, displaced person camp. It's more like a few houses together that the Jewish community, with the help of the Joint, put together in order to rehabilitate those who came back from concentration camps. And that was the place that my mother was. They tried to teach them things and spend the day in order to make them come back to life slowly, slowly. I'll switch a little bit to my father, and then I'll combine them. My father also came from a similar family, not far from there, but the place they lived in was under the Romanian ruling, not Hungarian. So this is why they were not deported to Auschwitz, but to a place called Transnistria. Transnistria beyond the river Dnistro or Dniester. It was a kind of a labor camp, or it was not a death camp in the sense of gas chambers or crematorium, but people died there by the hundreds of thousands, from hunger, from diseases, from persecution, for everything. Somehow, my father's family managed to survive and came back, but one did not. There were three boys and 2 girls. My father's name was Yaakov Yitzchak. He came back, and the family. And they came also back to their hometown to find a similar situation. Their home was taken and everything looted. They had a lumber yard which was taken, so they're out of business now. They have to reestablish themselves and try to create a new life. So he started to do business and to create a new living, a new life. And with that framework, he had a meeting in the city where my mother was in that camp with somebody. He came to that camp and he saw my mother. He fell in love with her and he wanted to date her. He asked Tzipora. Now Tzipora acted as her mother. She was older, she was much older. She was 8 years older than my mother. And Tzipora was the one who, as I said before, she saved her, and she kind of took responsibility on her. So, my father asked Tzipora to date my mother. So Tzipora says, that's very nice that you want to date her. There are two conditions to that. Number one, you are not dating her, you are marrying her. And number two, we are all going to Palestine. Tzipora was married already there, and it's also a kind of a story. If you remember, I told in the beginning that when they arrived to Auschwitz, on the left line, there was two sisters, one of them holding a baby. She was married already. Obviously, she didn't make it. Her husband survived and came back just to find out that his wife and child are not anymore. So he married her sister. He married Tzipora, which was his sister. So now Tzipora is married, and she asked, and my father asked to marry my mother. So they both married, and they started to look for a way to get to Israel, to Palestine at that time. There was an organization at that time called Habricha, the Escape, which looked for survivors from all over Europe, put them in kind of temporary displacement person camps in order to get them to the ports on the Mediterranean and on the Black Sea, from where ships will come and take them to Palestine. After some time there in the camp, my parents and Tzipora and her husband managed to embark on a ship in the port of Burgas, Bulgaria, on the Black Sea, towards Palestine. The ship was intercepted in mid-sea by the British, as many of the ships did, and was dragged to Cyprus, where the British put in place 5 detention camps. And my mother and my parents finally ended up in one of those camps. There was it was obviously not a happy place. It was a camp. It was barbed wires. And my mother said that when they entered there, she said to my father, I just came out of a place with barbed wires just to get again to a place like this. There was no choice. So they were there. I was born there in the camp, together with 2,200 babies there, kind of a baby booming there. And after the establishment of the State of Israel, they came to Israel and started a new life for the 3rd time. Luckily, they managed. We are 3 children. My parents had 3 children, 9 grandchildren, more than 30 great-grandchildren, so kind of a tribe. And my mother used to say, you guys are my triumph and my victory over the Nazis. I would like to conclude with one with one anecdote that, for me, describes the climax of the revival part of the story. I was in the IDF, and when I graduated the officer course, the equivalent to the courses that we have here. And it's a big ceremony when the graduation of the officer course. It's a big ceremony with a lot of dignitaries, with an orchestra, with the parents of the cadets. Very nice ceremony. So my parents are there. They are sitting on a stand. We are on the floor doing what we did, getting the ranks. And after we finish the ceremony, there's the mingling between the parents and the cadets for a nice meal. It's a nice event. Everything finished. I see people are mingling. I'm looking for my parents. I don't see them anywhere. I'm looking for my parents. Finally, I see them from afar, sitting on the stand, still sitting on the stand, while everybody is down on the floor already. So I go there, and I see my mother crying, sobbing. And I asked, Mom, what happened? It's supposed to be a happy day. Your son is an officer now. You're supposed to be happy. He said, you don't understand, she says. When I was in Auschwitz, under the feet of the Blokova, and she almost killed me, in my rosiest dreams, I could not imagine that one day I'll have a son, and he will be an officer in a Jewish army, in a Jewish state. This is something more than I can handle. So this is the story I wanted to share with you, but I would end with one more thing. The generation of our parents is a unique one, unique historically. Not too many generations in history can declare that within less than a decade, they went from utter extinction to creating new families, a new state, a new home, a new homeland. Only them. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, Natan. Thank you, and thank you for all the speakers who shared their stories with us. The hour is late, but we'd like for you to just indulge us for another few minutes. We have Kita Zayin of our wonderful congregation here with us, and they've prepared a very special song for you. Goes without saying that to have the children of our congregation here with us to witness these stories is very special and very important. So I asked them to take their place on the steps of the bima, and we'll sing Oifen Pripitchik.
Pripitchik brennt a fire, und in Stub is heiß, und der Rebbe lernt kleine Kinderlach, dem Aleph Beis, rebelleren kleiner kinderlach dem alef zeitje kinderlach gedenkje taiere was lerendo sog noch amol und tag noch amol kom et salefu sog noch amol und tag noch amol kom et salefu sit by the fireplace while the fire burns and the rabbi teaches them the alphabet, all they need to learn. And the rabbi teaches them the alphabet, all they need to learn. The rabbi says to them, pay attention now, you need to know this well, so that you can read the Holy Torah and one day teach as well. So that you can read the Holy Torah and one day teach as well. Sound the letters out. Aleph sounds like ah, and Bet sounds like ba. And the letters make up words to live by, words to live by. And the letters make up words to live by, words to live by. When you get older, please remember what I taught you here. Take these words to heart and keep them close to you. Keep them very dear. Take these words to heart and keep them close to you. Keep them very dear. All the rebelleren kleine kinderlach kommet
Please rise.
There's a very special song written about those who fought back. We've all sung it every year that we gather here. And I ask you to sing it again. It is in your programs, so we can all sing together. Zog nit kein Mol, the hymn of the partisans.
Sag nicht kein Mal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Chotsch Himmeln bleiete, versteg beleuetig. Kommen weit doch unser Reus gebäckte Show. Es fegt a Poig von uns entrott mir seinen Do. Kommen etwa mich unser Reus gebäckte Show. Es fegt a Poig von uns entrott mir seinen Do. Never say that you are going your last way. Through lead-filled skies above the blight of the blue of day. The hour for which we all long will is certainly appear. The earth just underneath our tread that we are here. The hour for which we long will certainly appear. The earth just underneath our tread that we are here. Sag nicht kein nur, als du gehst den letzten Weg. Gott Himmel bleiene, verstehen bleue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser Reis gebeckte schon. Es wird ein Poik vor und treut mir seinen Do. Kommen wird noch unser Reis gebeckte schon. Es wird ein Poik vor und treut mir seinen Do.
Please remain standing for just a moment. I'll ask Wendy Yeager-Hyman, the chair of our committee for this event, for some closing remarks, and then we'll join together, all of us, for the singing of Hatikva.
Just last week at our Seder, I looked around the table and realized that the 19 people at my table consisted of one Holocaust survivor and 18 descendants of Holocaust survivors. I was taken aback when I saw that my one-year-old granddaughter was sharing the Seder with her 100-year-old Holocaust survivor great-grandmother. I told everyone at the table what a blessing it was to be at someone's first Seder with someone who was attending their 101st Seder. My 9-year-old granddaughter then corrected me and said, "No, Nana, Gigi is attending her 201st Seder. There are 2 Seders every year." We all laughed, and I thought to myself, right, except for the Seders that she missed when she was in the camps. But then I looked around the table one more time and thought how blessed we really are. We have all risen from the ashes to live, to laugh, to love, and to flourish. How those sitting around my table were the proof that the dream of Hitler and his henchmen had never become a reality. I would like to thank Esther Barnoy, Sarah and Nathan Baruch for sharing their survival, the stories of how they and their families found the strength to rise from the ashes to help fulfill the dream of creating a Jewish homeland in Eretz Yisrael. I want to thank our clergy and all of the committee members for all of their hard work, especially Cantor Barnoy for all of his IT expertise and his patience. We remember those that perished, we honor those that survived, and we vow to keep telling their stories and to make sure that the world never forgets. We are still here, we are still strong, we are committed to helping to extinguish hate wherever it exists, so the world will never again see a time when the inhumanity of man reigns. Never again. Never again.
Thank you, Wendy. I just want to mention, thank you for making me the IT
Expert.
whatever,
You're
but
wonderful.
the truth is, as you know, that it is our live stream technician, Doug Yole, and his partner here, who's handling the sound, David Chitashvili, who are really the ones who put in the effort and made it all work. And now please join us for Hatikva.
ציון
at the coat counter, you will find from our men's club yahrzeit candles. Please take them home with you, and tonight before you go to bed, light a candle for the 6 million who perished just because they were Jewish. Thank you.